Right, welcome back to James's science class. Now, in today's video, we will revise questions from Primary 3, 4, and 5. Let's get started. The diagram shows the female and male human reproductive system. So this will be the female reproductive system. This will be the male one. So if you look at this, right, you will notice that now this answer is correct. This is the ovary. This is the place where the egg cells or the female reproductive cells are being released. Now, as for this part, right, this was written inaccurately. Now, these are the testes and this is the penis. So, R is supposed to be a testis, but this is the wrong answer. However, the function is correct, so I believe this must have been a careless mistake. So, always do check your work. So, the testes will produce the sperm cells, or you can also call them the male reproductive cells. Now, in this case here, let's take a look. Now, Paulo carried out an experiment using plant S as shown below. He removed a section of the stem of plant S as shown in the diagram. So whenever you see diagrams like this and removing part of the stem, most likely this question is about water carrying tubes, food carrying tubes. What happens to the plant when either one of these tubes or both are being removed? And therefore, these questions if it's a P6 question, it may also be linked to photosynthesis. Now, after some days, you notice some swelling. If there's swelling, right, that tells you that something is accumulating there because it cannot get through. Swelling is like you blowing up a balloon. Because the balloon is being inflated, the air that you're blowing in cannot get out. That's why it is like swelling up. Okay, think of it like that. So that if the swelling is on top, therefore that means that the accumulation of these things are coming from the top. And what could be coming from the top? Well, the leaves are making food, and the food is being transported to all parts of the plant through the food carrying tubes, and they are being moving downwards definitely. And therefore, this part that is being accumulated, where accumulation is happening, must be the food produced by the leaves. So let's take a look at the answer. The food made by leaves is unable to reach part. Why? Why is this part here? See? Why? So this first part is correct. Okay. Now 2 marks, right? You need to give 2 points. So the first 1 mark, this person, the student got it. Very good job. All right. So the food made by leaves is unable to reach. Why? So, okay, this answer tells me that there is food here. The second 1 mark explains why. So the food carrying tube was removed. Okay, good. Food carrying tube was removed. Therefore, food cannot get through. So 2 marks for this answer. The next one now, based on your answer in part A, which is the food carrying tubes were removed. Give a reason why removing a section of the stem caused plant S to die a week later. So the food carrying tube was removed. So the root is unable to get food from the leaves and died. Alright, so this is, I think the answer is good for getting half a mark. Why? Firstly, it tells me that the food did not reach the roots. And therefore, the death of the roots or the death of the root cells is responsible for the death of the plants. However, this answer doesn't tell me why are the roots so important. Why is removing the roots the cause of the plant's death? Because to be honest, right, let's say if I were to tear off this twig, or I remove this, or I remove this, the plant wouldn't die, right? Because there are still remaining leaves for the plant to make food and to send food to the rest of the plant. So why are the roots so important? So therefore the function of the roots is necessary here, which is to absorb water. And without water, for those in primary 6, you will know if there's no water, your photosynthesis cannot happen. If the photosynthesis cannot happen, and therefore the leaves cannot make food, even if you give it carbon dioxide and light and chlorophyll. Okay, so the function of the roots are important here. Let's go on to the next one. The diagram shows 4 different flowers, W, X, Y, and Z, and some of the flowers have parts removed. This is an adaptation from a previous PSLE MCQ question, and it's quite commonly tested in school, so do take note. So for this kind of question, you need to know the function of the different parts of the flower. Like you need to know that the petals have a function for attracting pollinators. The stigma is used to allow the pollen grains to stick on it, and the style allows the pollen tube to grow down into it. The ovary contains ovules, which are the female reproductive cell. So when the pollen tube grows and enters the ovule, and then you start to fertilize the plant, the flower, and then the petals will start to wither and come off. The ovary will swell and become a fruit, and the ovules will become seed. And you know that this is the anther, which is the male part of the reproductive part of the flower, and this part produces the pollen grains, and the filament just is responsible for holding it up. So if you want to make a food, right? If you want to have fertilization, definitely there must be ovary, there must be ovule, and there must be the style, and finally the stigma. Why? You need to have this entire part in order to allow for the pollen grains to first land on the stigma and to travel down the style as a pollen tube grows down the style and enter into the ovary, and of course to fertilize the ovule. So all these 4 parts need to be there. So the flowers that will not be able to go through fertilization will not have these 4, such as flower Y. The remaining 3, you will see all these 4 parts. So flower Y, why? Because it has a stigma ovary removed. Okay? But so what if they are removed? This is an example of you have given the evidence. Yeah, you observe something, it doesn't have it. But this answer doesn't state that you understand the function of the stigma ovary. Alright, and so if your answer ought to go on to explain that without these parts, the pollen grains cannot land on the stigma. Without the style, the pollen tube cannot grow down into the ovary. Without the ovary, there's no ovules to be fertilized. Okay, and that will explain the function fully. The function of those parts, the missing part of the flowers. Because you must understand the idea of fertilization, which is basically the fusing of the male and female reproductive cell. So this answer does not talk at all about fertilization. There's no mention of the fertilization process. Okay? Flower W cannot pollinate itself. Let's take a look. W is this. Because there's no anther, so there's no pollen grains. Can it be fertilized? Yes, but by pollen grains from, let's say, other flowers. Alright, by other flowers, yes, it's possible. Now let's carry on. So this is how you will explain. It doesn't have the anther for self-pollination. Okay, now next one. In the diagram below, draw one arrow to show how pollination occurs between the flowers. Of course, sometimes you need to explain words, the meaning of pollination, which is the transfer of the pollen grains from the anther of one flower to the stigma of another flower, or the same flower, right, or another flower of the same species. So this arrow is fine, it's correct. Next one. Now flower Z of plant A and flower T of plant B. Now flower Z has brightly colored petals, very important. This helps to attract pollinators. Compared to flower T, dull colored, so therefore it's not attracting pollinators. You need other means of pollination. So you see features, characteristics such as the anther that's hanging out, the stigma that is feathery and spread wide open with large surface area to allow for higher chances of pollen grains in the wind from landing on it. So what's the most likely method of pollination for plant A? Definitely by insect, that's correct. And for plant B, definitely by wind. Now, therefore, you need to now mention one other possible characteristic that helps them to be pollinated. Alright, what's one other characteristic? So, if say it's one other, then you cannot use bright petals anymore, because bright colored petal is given. So you need to give something else. For example, large petals. And for this one, alright, you can talk about it has a stigma that sticks out. For what purpose? To catch pollen grains. Now, of course, the marking here I could have been maybe a little strict, because you can argue that here you are supposed to just state the possible characteristics. There's no need to explain. Alright, so in this case, well, perhaps, yeah, you can get half a mark for this. Right, but this is definitely not correct, because you're giving the same characteristic that was given when you're asked to give another one. Next one. Florence studied the relationship between the wind speed and the distance of seeds dispersed from parent plant C and D. Alright, so market, you have the graph here that shows that plant C, I redrew plant C graph, okay, shows that as the wind speed increases, like this, the distance of seed dispersed from the plant increases correspondingly, which tells you there's a direct relationship between wind speed and the distance of the seed dispersed from the parent plant. And therefore, very clearly, this plant, right, plant C, the fruit or the seed from plant C definitely is dispersed by wind. Okay, so that will be a wing-like structure. So plant C, wing-like structure is from fruit Q. So here, plant C is correct claim, but 2 marks, right? Explain your answer using information from the bar graph and the diagrams above. So, okay, first one, fruit Q is dispersed by wind. So that's a reason, right? But what's the evidence? What tells you that fruit Q is dispersed by wind? You need to get information from 2 things, right? From the bar graph and the diagram. So I don't see the mention of wing-like structure at all in this. So in the evidence, you've got to state that fruit Q has wing-like structure. That's one of the evidences. The second one is based on the graph above. It shows the relationship that as the wind speed increases, the distance of the seed dispersed from the parent plant increases. Therefore, you can conclude that fruit Q is dispersed by wind. So this answer is worth 1 mark for the reasoning, dispersed by wind, but no marks for the evidences, because you were told to use information from the bar graph and the diagrams. But I didn't see any of those inside here. Okay, I missed out one evidence. You have one. Seed, distance of the seed of plant C increase when the wind speed increase. You have this one from the graph. Okay, half a mark here. Good job. But I missed the one out from the diagram, which is a wing-like structure. Okay, make sure that wing-like structure. Now, fruit P is not a juicy fruit. Explain how the dispersal of the seed of fruit P, and fruit P will be this ugly thing here, okay? Alright, fruit P. So, explain how the dispersal of the seeds of fruit P is different from that. So, we're asked to talk about difference, then you're going to make a comparison. So, fruit P has tiny hooks, good evidence, so you get half a mark for this. They hook onto animals and they fall out in a while. Okay, fine. 1 mark for describing the way fruit P is being dispersed. How about apple? Okay, the apple is eaten and then the seed is pooped out. Now, I think this part isn't as clear as you could have been. So if you are able to talk about it being juicy, therefore it attracts animals to eat it. Alright, I think this is important. Alright, and you talk about it being undigested seed is passed out and then it's put away from the parent plant. So all those things, sorry, there's no one. It's only one mark here. Half plus half is 1. So the idea of dispersal is away from parent plant. In fruit pea, you explain it, right? Fall out in a while, so it moves away from the parent plant. But in this case here, there was no such inference. So it's always good to make it clear to your teachers, the one marking your work, that you really understand. Because there's no chance for the teacher who is marking your work to get back to you to ask you, what do you mean? Okay, so we are only doing some questions. So in this case here, water cycle question. Alright, so here, after 30 minutes, he observed that water droplets dripping from the bottom of the glass dish is here into the beaker. Explain the observation, 2 marks, right? So if it's 2 marks, it's got to be quite clear. Where are the 2 marks from? Talk about the evaporation, talk about the condensation, and talk about the dripping down inside. These 3 parts, okay? I repeat, the evaporation, condensation as the water vapor touches the cooler surface, then they flow to the center and drip into the beaker. Let's say you have all 3 parts. The hot water in the, okay, it's hot, right? In the container evaporated and touched the cooler surface of the glass dish. But evaporate into what? You need to show you understand the different states of water. So you have evaporated, then evaporate into water vapor. So and touch the cooler surface of the glass dish. Loses heat, very good. Talk about the heat loss part. And condenses into water droplets. Good. So talk about this part went up, condensed water droplets. So far, it got half a mark. Okay, let me see. Evaporation part, yes, half, and condensed water droplets. But then you didn't talk about how did the water droplets that's on the glass got into the beaker. That flow to the center of the dish before falling in the beaker. This part wasn't there. So I couldn't give you marks for this portion. He decided to change the temperature of the water in the glass container to 10 degrees Celsius. State and explain how this change affects the rate at which part A, which is water dripping inside the beaker, happens. So you want to change the rate of condensation. So how do you change the rate of condensation? Well, here it says change the temperature of water to 10 degrees Celsius. So if now the water in the container is not warm anymore, the rate of evaporation will decrease. If the rate of evaporation decreases, there's less water vapor inside the glass container, there will be less condensation. Alright, so this answer, right, this change decreased the amount of water droplets. Okay, but how? I need to hear it. As temperature of the water affects the rate of evaporation. But can be affecting it by increasing it or decreasing it. The word increase, decrease isn't used in this answer. So this is how I would improve it. The change decreases the amount of water droplets as lower temperature of water reduces the rate of evaporation and condensation. So this answer wasn't good enough to get you any marks. Okay, now next one, let's take a look at this. Another question on water, right? So there is a container here with hot water inside, and it's placed under a box made of a material. Now there are 3 such materials, and the purpose of this setup is to test to see which of this material A, B or C is a better conductor of heat. So the theory is if it is a good conductor of heat, heat can pass through it quickly and therefore the hot water will cool down much faster. If this material is a poor conductor of heat, heat cannot pass through easily, then the water will still cool down, but it will stay hot for much longer time. So take a look at this, right? This one stay hot for a much longer time. So this is definitely a poor conductor of heat. And this one is the material B, right? Is made of the best conductor of heat. So best conductor of heat must be B. The claim must be there. Now, and there's no marks for claim because you can just choose, right? You got to explain to get a 1 mark. So, for example, it allows the most amount of heat to pass through it to the surrounding. Therefore, if the temperature decreased the most in 10 minutes. So you give the evidence, you get half a mark. Evidence comes from the table. How do you know it's B? Because the temperature drops the most compared to the other two. But why does it drop the most? Because it means it allows the most amount of heat to pass through it, therefore decreasing the temperature. So half a mark for the reason, half a mark for the evidence. Now, this person listener want to know what is the good material for making a lunchbox to keep food warm. Therefore, she is definitely choosing the poorest conductor of heat, and that will be material C. So I must see C in the answer. Okay, good. It's a worst conductor of heat, and that will reduce the rate of heat loss from the warm sandwich to the surrounding. So this answer will get 1 mark for no marks for C, 1 mark for giving the characteristic of C, but did not explain. So why would you want the poor conductor of heat? So that it will reduce the rate of heat loss from the sandwich to the surrounding. This is the other 1 mark that you need to get. Now, still a similarity between evaporation and boiling. This answer is acceptable. They both convert liquid to gas. For me, I will talk about use the word state. They will change state from liquid to gas. Now, a tip that I'd like you to remember always is that poor conductors of heat will do 2 things. It will keep hot things hot. It will keep cold things cold. Which means if I want something else, I don't want a lunch box. I want a box that can keep my ice cream cold for the longest time. Then of course I will again choose the poor conductor of heat. Why? It keeps it keeps cold things cold. Okay. Let's go to electrical system question. So this person set up a circuit here and measure the brightness of the bulb of the light sensor. She added another bulb in series and measured the brightness of the bulb. She then repeated the experiment for a different number of bulbs arranged in series and recorded the data in the table below. Okay, more bulbs, less and less brightness. So therefore, this must be in series, right, as we told. So based on the data above, state the relationship between this. So I should see these words in the answer. So as the number of bulbs increases, brightness of the bulb decreases. That's fine. For the above circuit, when one bulb blows, what happened to the rest? Now, you must see the word fuse carefully. Now, fusing means that the filament of the bulb has melted, creating a gap. So when you put many bulbs here, if one bulb were to fuse, the remaining bulb will not light up. You can say that they will not light up, but they didn't fuse. Alright? You can say that how the other bulbs? The other bulbs will not be lit. Will no longer be lit. Why? Now the reasoning is correct. The fused bulb creates an open circuit. This part is correct. But because the words here used tells me you're not sure what does the word fuse mean. Okay? So you should just say that all the remaining bulbs will not be lit because the fuse bulb creates an open circuit. So this answer, I will not give you any marks. What's the possible measurement for the brightness of the bulbs when there are 4 bulbs arranged in series? Well, if there are 4 bulbs here, it must be a brightness in between these two. So any number between these two is fine. Okay. Just a bit more. Now this person repeated the experiment to find out how the brightness of the bulb changes when the bulbs are added in the parallel arrangement. Parallel means that the brightness now will not change. Now, so complete the circuit to show how the electrical circuit was connected when there are 3 bulbs arranged in parallel. So these are conditions that you must be very careful about. And when you draw, there must be no gaps at all. So very good job here, all correct. They didn't state how many batteries, right? There was 1 here, so you use 1 here, that's fine. Next one now. Okay. Right, I think we forgot to do this. So this person carried out an experiment shown in the diagram below. After a few hours, he observed a dish of fine water from the setup. Okay. Black paint means light cannot pass through, so no photosynthesis is happening. The only thing happening here is respiration. So during respiration, oxygen is taken in, carbon dioxide is given out. Now lime water will absorb carbon dioxide, and so this one will turn chalky. So after a few hours, lime water will turn chalky or cloudy. So the first part is the lime water turns cloudy or milky or chalky. Okay, any of these words should be fine. There's 1 mark. Explain what happened. So the plant gives out carbon dioxide during respiration, and that enters, copy this word, right, enters the lime water to turn it cloudy. Okay. Now Prague decided to carry out another experiment to record his breathing rate for a period of time in the day from 1 p.m. to 7 p.m. He went about his daily activities and plotted the graph below. Okay, first thing I notice as well is this, right? Okay, go to 0, and this is a 0 line, right? So at 7 p.m., his breathing rate went to 0. Was he dead? Right? So that is the wrong timing. Which 1 hour period was wrong? That shows that it was incorrect. Alright, is this time from 6 to 7? That here is 6 to 7 p.m. where the breathing rate went to 0, which is not possible. Okay, unless he held his breath. How long can he hold his breath, right? So he was playing basketball. That is an increase in activity. When you are increasing a physical activity, your heart rate, breathing rate will all go up. It's a going up part. So therefore the answer should be, I think, 1 hour period. Now, tricky. Alright, 4 to 5 looks like it's going up. 5 to 6 is coming down. So actually this is not correct. 4 to 5 is the correct part. 4 p.m. to 5 p.m. That shows increase in physical activity, therefore increase in the breathing rate. Another circuit question. Alright, so there are 4 objects here, and we were told that bulb 2 did not light up. If bulb 2 did not light up, that means the current and the rest lit up, right? The current could flow through this. But it couldn't flow through this part. Therefore, that tells you that R must have been a insulator of electricity. You got to use this. Otherwise, because some books will talk about insulator of heat. So if you just say insulator, I won't know which one you're referring to, right? So insulator of electricity. So you got to state this. As he created an open circuit for bulb 2. So what if you create an open circuit for bulb 2? Alright, so this part you talk about R. Okay, you miss out the first half mark because you didn't use the correct phrase. But I got a reason for the second half mark, as in why bulb 2 didn't light up, because This is an insulator, it created an open circuit. But you didn't talk about P, Q, and R. You're supposed to talk about P, Q, R, and S. You talk about R, but didn't talk about P, Q, and S. So you could talk about P, Q, and S are conductors of electricity because they allow current to flow through to light up bulbs B1, B3, and B4. There is a missing 1 mark. Always know that to get 2 marks, you need to, in simple terms, write more. But write more of what? So the questions are quite clear to you, right? So if you only talk about one of the 4 things we asked you to talk about, definitely you're not going to get your full marks. Okay? She decided to use only the bulbs and batteries in the previous circuit without the above objects, so you change the circuit to the one below. Alright, now no more objects, so now current can pass through all of these wires and light up all the bulbs. Now what if bulb for blue? If bulb for blue, now for current to flow to light everything up, right, they must be able to trace back. Let's start from here. Cannot get through. So if I can't get through, then of course none of this will light up. Now, anyone of you in secondary school look at this, you know that this is a wrong concept. Current doesn't flow like this. There needs to be a potential difference. But I'm addressing primary school students here, so please forgive me, okay? She realized the bulb B4 blew and could not light up. So, of course, answer no. Claim is correct. 0 for claim. 1 mark, thankfully, I don't have to write as much. So, as bulb 4 fuse is on root of every closed circuit, okay. Current cannot flow through, you create an open circuit. I'm looking for this term. There's a gap or this open circuit that does not allow current to flow. So basically my answer would be when this one blew, it created an open circuit, so the current will not flow through. And where can she add another switch? Well, we put X here so that only bulbs B3 and B4 can light up. Right, so only here, like this. Good job. And last question. So Paris took a hot shower. When she was showering, she observed some white mist. And the white mist is actually tiny water droplets. Therefore, you're right to say that they're in a liquid state. After showering, Paris opened the bathroom door and came out dripping wet. Before she could use a towel to dry herself, she felt cold. Why? Because the water droplets on the body gained heat from her body, first half mark, and evaporated. So why would she feel cold because of this? Because the body lost heat to the water. Therefore, she felt cold. When we gain heat, we feel hot. When we lose heat, we feel cold. After drying herself with the towel, Paris' hair was still wet. Suggest one way she can speed up the drying of her hair. So, and explain. So you have several answers. You use a hair dryer. Alright, 1 mark for the suggestion. Really, it's 1 mark. Use this, right, use a hair dryer, 1 mark. How? So the rate of evaporation is increased, alright, with the heat and the wind from the hair dryer. I'll ignore this surface area part because I don't quite know what you mean by this. The hair dryer provides heat and wind, so increase the rate of evaporation. Alright, so all the best to your revision and to your upcoming tests. Take care. I'll see you in the next video.